Buckle up. After a blockbuster rock album in 1983 that sold millions of records, expectations were through the roof for this band and their new one. But it took 3 years to produce this record, and it was one of the most expensive albums ever done. The band would actually have to sell 5 million copies just to break even, and then their first single tanked. Up next, the story of this song that changed their fortunes overnight, and the story of side 2 of one of the biggest rock records ever on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. We have the stories straight from the legends right here, so make sure that you subscribe below to this channel because you never know who's going to show up on here every day. Also, make sure to check out ProfessorofRock.com. We actually have some new merch there, and if you click up here where I'm pointing, you can get there as well. The Vintage Years collection is there, also other Professor of Rock merchandise. And also take a look at our exclusive content at Patreon. Both of these things help us curate this channel. Def Leppard truly marched through hell to create and finish 1987's Hysteria. We covered the trials that they faced in Volume 1 of this piece, which you can watch below. We'll link to it. It was one of the most expensive albums ever produced, and like I said, they'd have to sell 5 million copies just to break even. Their first few singles didn't do what they thought they would, and it really looked like Hysteria could be a turkey, success-wise. Enter Pour Some Sugar on Me. The anthem that shot Hysteria into blockbuster orbit. It was actually the last song written for Hysteria and was put together in only 2 weeks, blazing fast when compared to the other tracks on the album. Even though at that time Hysteria was almost finished, the band had 11 stellar tracks at that moment. Legendary producer Mutt Lange felt that they were missing that one big crossover hit that they needed. And then the muse went into full swing. So here's what happened. Joe Elliott was in the studio. He was playing a riff that he had been messing around with on an acoustic guitar for a couple of weeks, and it caught Mutt Lange's ear. Mutt thought Joe's riff was very cool and should be shaped into a new song for the record. So Joe went to one end of the studio, and Mutt was on the other, and the two began to say, whatever words or lines came into their heads into a dictaphone, while Joe's melody was playing on the studio speakers as a backing track. Joe Elliott claims that Pour Some Sugar on Me was partially inspired by Aerosmith's Walk This Way. Which put him on a wave of mixing the vocal styles of rock and rap. They swapped dictaphones and began an exercise of adding or concluding what had been recorded on the respective recorders. Joe said that he thought that he heard Love Is Like a Bomb. When he listened to the playback of Mutt's dictaphone, and the lyrical structure really ramped up from there. Pour Some Sugar on Me was an instant rock marvel with an irresistible hook that could liven up a monastery, really. Joe, he said this before, every tune that he's composed includes elements of his favorite songs from his childhood. He's always surmised that he had subconscious inspiration for Pour Some Sugar on Me from the first 45 that he ever bought, the #1 bubblegum ditty, Sugar Sugar, by the fictitious studio group The Archies that featured lead vocals by Ron Dante in 1969. Sugar, oh, honey, honey. Actually done an interview with Ron. I'll have to share that story. At the end of Sugar Sugar, you can hear that ear candy lyric, pour a little sugar on me, baby. All grown up and ready to rock steady, Joe and the band added double entendres galore for their sticky sweet rocker. Of course, it's become a rock and roll majesty. Since then, Pour Some Sugar on Me soared to #2 on the Billboard Hot 100. Should have been a #1. You can check out our piece on that. It was the fourth single released from Hysteria and the track that really sent record sales of the album through the roof in America, at least, and saved the album from being an also ran here to being one of the biggest ever. Sugar put it on the fast track for sure, no doubt. I remember when it was number one on Dial MTV for the entire summer. Man, what a great summer that was. Pour Some Sugar on Me became one of the heaviest played songs in the States at that moment. And from there on, sales of Hysteria surged. The album was on its way to becoming one of the biggest selling records of all time from there. Actually, more than a year after its release, Hysteria became the number one album in America. It took over a year. So the last cut on side one is the cleverly bombastic Armageddon It. That was the sixth single from Hysteria. Armageddon It was a perfect song for Def Leppard concerts in stadiums and large arenas because it had the whole crowd on their feet with the unbridled euphoria that only a big rock production like that can give you. Actually, Def Leppard was one of the first major rock acts to perform in stadiums and large arenas in the round. And energizers like Armageddon It that get fans dancing and shouting at the top of their lungs is what it's all about. If you've ever seen him in concert, you know what I'm talking about. Armageddon It is a great example of Mutt Lange's genius of producing hybrid magic, taking parts from different classic rock acts that influenced Def Leppard and blend them together in one captivating track. You can hear and feel the sonic power of British rock bands that Def Leppard loved with touches of Thin Lizzy, T-Rex, Sweet, and Zeppelin. Definitely had momentum from Pour Some Sugar on Me having gone to number 2 and Love Bites topping the charts with Hysteria selling faster than hotcakes. Armageddon It was the number 6 single to be released in the U.S. from Hysteria. It jumped to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. It went to number 3 on the U.S. rock chart. It was also a top 20 single in the U.K. So as we explode into side 2 of this rock masterwork, I want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the glasses that I jam daily here. When you get your eyewear from Zenni Optical, you can say goodbye to foggy lenses and glare with Zenni's advanced 2-in-1 anti-fog and anti-reflective coating. Just add that feature when you choose your frames at Zenni.com today. So side 2 kicks off with Gods of War, Def Leppard's attack on the Cold War and the threat of nuclear war between the US and the Soviet Union that had many on edge in the mid-'80s. Gods of War fades in with the distant sounds of a futuristic war with lasers, machine gun, fire, explosions, and the chanting of battle cries. The track actually evolved from a Steve Clark riff that Mutt used to arrange the song. Def Leppard usually keeps politics out of their music, but not on Gods of War. As the Joe Elliott lyric goes, we're fighting for the gods of war, but what the hell we fighting for? I ain't gonna fight no more, no way. I ain't gonna fight no more, no way. Gods of War closes with more stirring sounds of battle and actually President Ronald Reagan's pro-military sound bites about America not caving in and not being passive in the face of terrorism.
What we have to do, we counted on America to be passive.
Now, the second cut on side 2 of Hysteria is Don't Shoot Shotgun. The story of an irresistible woman who uses her allure to get whatever she wants. Run for cover, she's so dangerous. This is simply a straight-ahead rock track with the fist-pumping Don't Shoot Shotgun chorus. Joe Elliott shouts of shotgun and shoot me baby, let it blow. Run Riot is next, no holds barred party mantra about letting loose, breaking some rules and pushing the pedal of life to the metal. keeps Hysteria rocking, but then, of course, the mood changes on this album with Hysteria, the title track. That's the number 4 track on side 2 and one of my favorite Def Leppard songs ever. Oh, I get hysterical, hysteria. Oh, can you feel it? Do you believe it? It's such a magical mysteria. When you get that feeling, better start believing. Hysteria is definitely influenced by Pink Floyd. And its lyrics and musical makeup is very haunting, very moving. Hysteria was the 3rd single, I believe, in the US. Yeah, number 3. It was the first on the album to break the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100. It also went to number 9 on the rock chart. It's really the song that started that slow rise of the album before it was really ignited by Pour Some Sugar on Me. What can you say about Hysteria? It's just a lush, infectious pre-chorus that demonstrates Mutt Lange's chord-building approach with those clean guitar chords that were recorded one note at a time instead of the traditional method of strumming the entire chord. As the title track that he named, it is fitting that Hysteria is also Rick Allen's favorite Def Leppard song because of the hope and the comfort that the song has always given him. The title certainly has emotional significance to Rick, reminding him of how he beat back death for a second chance at life, and which he has savored every single moment. Hysteria, one of the best Def Leppard tracks ever, in my opinion. Next up is Excitable. This is one that always scared the hell out of me when I was listening on my headphones.
Are you excitable? Are you excitable?
I remember I'd be half asleep and then I'd hear that opening voice and just snap to attention. I'd fall out of my bed in the process. Very, very scary. And then the grand finale on Hysteria is Love and Affection. It's a song about a no-strings-attached relationship that satisfies physical needs without the complications of emotional ties. I always thought that this should have been a single. You know, the 8th single to be more precise. I think it is one of the best Def Leppard album tracks out there, with one of Joe's best vocals from the album and just incredible harmonies to boot, like they always have. Def Leppard and Mutt Lange had accomplished their mission on making a landmark rock album that was their commercial zenith. It sold over 20 million copies so far around the world. It was the album that propelled Def Leppard into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as one of the most successful acts of the rock and roll era. To me, the sessions for Hysteria and the trials surrounding it, how the band persevered after so much adversity, it's just one of the great rock and roll stories of all time. The band can look back with a fond and tearful memory of joy, triumph, and tragedy. Rick Allen's miraculous survival of a horrific accident and fighting through all those other obstacles that would have crushed the hope of most other bands. But Def Leppard showed incredible strength, perseverance, and resolve. Not only in the creation of the album with Mutt Lange leading the charge, but also in what happened after. David Simone, managing director of Phonogram Records at the time, estimated that the album might have been the most expensive record ever made in the UK. Hysteria took over, like I said, a year to hit number 1 on the US charts. Like I explained in the first episode, their first single, Women, flamed out. It was a stiff on the charts, even struggled on the rock charts. In the beginning of this, it seemed like the momentum of their previous 1983 blockbuster Pyromania was lost from such a long absence. They kept moving forward, and the magic that the band knew that they had captured in the studio, it began to propel the band forward. In fact, after Pour Some Sugar on Me pulled in the masses, Def Leppard held the #1 spot on both the singles and album charts with Love Bites and Hysteria, respectively. That doesn't happen very often. And the band never really doubted, even when they were going through those times. I always loved the album cover. While the music was enthralling and ignited the imagination, the sleeve added to that. The creator of the cover was Andy Airfix, who was long associated with the band after that. He's worked with everybody from Led Zeppelin, Metallica, and Judas Priest. But he got the Hysteria job thanks to 80s band The Thompson Twins. Actually, Def Leppard's co-manager Peter Mensch saw his artwork for the Thompson Twins album Here's to Future Days from 1985. He was so impressed, so they chose him to do that. Now, before they settled on Hysteria, the album, I think I said this in the first one, but the album was going to be called Animal Instinct. So he actually created a sleeve around that concept. He wanted to have something turning around to look at the listener on the album cover. So that original illustration, it had an eagle, a lion, and a shark all blending into each other. And then the band changed the album title to Hysteria. So that he had to change his thinking a little bit there. So the new cover had a distorted face inside of a triangle like it was melting into a complex background. Something that owed to its genesis in part to an early version of the Def Leppard logo. The triangle, of course, a recognizable image for the fans, so Andy felt it was a nice starting point. And from there, he created something that he thought might, frighten people a bit, liven them up. The full-on face that was used is almost human, but the side view isn't, thus retaining that animal aspect of the original. The idea there being that this strange thing turning around to face you made it scarier. That's what he said. In the end, Airfix had 2 years to finalize the design because the album took so long. He continued to talk with the band as the recording progressed, and Andy said that the band trusted him and that they would let him know what they thought of his design. Some of the band members didn't fancy it as much as the design for Pyromania, but in the end, they felt that it was really strong and that it suited what the band was going for musically at that moment. So minus founding member Pete Willis, who was fired from the band in 1982, Hysteria showcased the seminal Def Leppard lineup with Joe Elliott on lead and background vocals, Steve Clark, co-lead guitar, background vocals, Phil Collen, co-lead guitarist, background vocals, the great Rick Savage on bass and background vocals, and Rick Allen on drums and background vocals. And exhibiting their deft sense of humor, the band listed the Bankrupt Brothers, which is a pseudonym for all 5 Def Leppard band members, plus Mutt Lange and Rocky Newton, as the performers of the background vocals on the album. Some of the best background vocals ever. Hysteria was sadly the last Def Leppard album to feature Steve Clark, the wild guitar hero who died from alcohol poisoning in 1991. Steve contributed musically or lyrically on 90% of the music recorded by Def Leppard, and the band, as well as the fans, always mourn the loss and honor the legacy of their beloved brother.
This is my very good friend, Mr. Stephen Clark, on the electric guitar!
Hysteria has had its detractors. Many of the Def Leppard faithful have said that the album was, too pop metal and not as heavy as Pyromania, too commercial. In retrospect, Hysteria is an undeniable crossover album. I mean, the band did in fact reach their goal that they had been aiming for with producer Mutt Lange to create a hard rock version of Michael Jackson's Thriller. Where every song was a potential single. But for my generation, Gen X, it was one of those unique records where you listened to every single song, back to front. When you add up the album cover, the songs, the entire album experience, it was, as the title track says, a magical Mysteria. Leave us a comment about side 2 of Hysteria and this amazing album. What are your memories? What are your picks for the best songs from this record? What is your Hysteria experience? Let us know in the comments. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe below and check out our other content on Patreon. Take a look at our merch on professorofrock.com. Help us keep this music alive. So important. Until next time, my friends, 3 chords and the truth.